Denisa, elle a demandé.
Yes, for Denisa.
It's so nice. I appreciate that she sent me a private message for...
You're on recording.
It's okay for my uncle.
Oh, that's so nice. That's really nice. Okay, so so chapter 1 to 8, we just learned all about the two souls and how they're built and how they function. Now, in chapter 9, we're going to read inside, but the Alter Rebbe talks about how these two souls affect us in our daily lives and what's our daily struggle because of these two souls, where they reside and how they affect us in our daily lives and our daily choices. Okay? So we're going to go inside. If you have a Tanya, Cheryl, and Mavi, you can open up to chapter 9. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to read inside. No, not this. Okay, chapter 9. I'm going to come to you so you could see. Ou tu peux juste ouvrir. Ou juste ouvre à chapter 9.
C'est page 136.
136,
je ne sais pas si ça c'est 136. Je ne sais pas si c'est le même livre.
Ah, okay.
Chapter 9.
Oui.
Yeah? Okay. Okay, so again, I'm just going to read the introduction. In the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe elaborated on the composition of the Jew's divine soul with its 10 holy soul powers and the 3 soul garments, and then his animal soul with its corresponding 10 powers and 3 garments originating in Klippa. Okay, so the difference between the godly and the animal soul is that one is holy, the godly soul, everything of it is holy, and the animal soul, all its 10 powers, soul powers, and garments are all Klippa, they're unholy. Now, in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe will discuss the battle fought within the Jew between these two souls. Okay? So I'm going to start reading. V'hine mikom mishkan nefesh habahamis shemiklipas noga b'chol ish Yisrael hu balev. The abode of the animal soul derived from klipat noga in every Jew is in the heart. Okay? So where does the animal soul get its soul source of energy? Where does it stay mainly? Is in the soul. And why? Bechalal smali shehu male dam ksiv ki hadam hu hanefesh. Okay, so specifically, it doesn't only stay in the heart, it specifically stays in the left ventricle that is filled with blood. Like it says, ki hadam, because the blood is the soul. And there's a pasuk in the Torah that says that the ki hadam hu hanefesh, that the blood is the soul. And what does it talk about? It's talking about the animal soul that resides in the heart. Now, why do you think the animal soul resides in the heart? Okay, the reason why is because the animal soul is primarily emotions. Even the intellect of the animal soul is just there to help the emotion and to get to what that emotion wants, okay? So the reason why it's in the heart is because the animal soul is primarily emotions. In the left of the heart is because that's where the blood is pumped and the soul is connected to the blood. Okay, it gets that energy from the blood. V'lachein kol hatayvas v'hispares v'chaz v'daimehem hein balev. And because of that, because it's in the heart, therefore, all the lusts, all the boasting and anger and similar passions are in the heart. Ume'alev hen mispashtos b'chol haguf. And from the heart, they spread throughout the entire body. V'gam ole lamoach shebaresh lechashev uleharher bahem ulehis bahem. Rising also to the brain and the head, to think and meditate about them, and to become cunning in them. Just as the blood has its source in the heart, and from the heart it circulates into every organ, rising also to the brain and the head. Okay, so let's understand that. So the blood starts in the left ventricle, and then it gets into the right ventricle to get oxygenated, and then it spreads through all the how do you call it, the veins, right? And with the veins go through all the body, even going up to the brain. Okay. Now, someone once asked, like, are you able to operate and remove your Yetzer Hara? So your Yetzer Hara, your Nefesh HaBe'amet, is not physical, but it works together with the blood. Okay, the blood.
It's connected to the blood.
For sure, it's connected. And when you have a problem, yes, there is a reason. It says because the blood is the most human part of the body, and the animal soul is what represents the human. Okay, so it's connected. It's very physical. Okay, so that's why it's in the soul. And why is it? That's why it's in the blood. And why in the heart? Because the heart dominates the emotions. That's where all your emotions are, and the animal soul is dominated by emotions. Okay, so just like the blood starts off in the heart and then spreads all over the body, so too that emotion, that anger, that lust, that passion for whatever it is, anything that's unholy, that's klipa, it starts in your heart, and then it goes throughout your body and up to your brain. And sometimes you don't feel like moving, or you're not motivated, or you're super motivated to do something. It's because it's connected. It's that your soul that gives that message over to your heart and gives, which spreads to your whole body and makes you able to do whatever action you want. Okay? Do you understand?
Oui,
Yeah.
une question.
Yes, go ahead.
Au début, il dit, the abode of the animal soul derived from Klipat Noga in every Jew. What about the non-Jews?
That's a good question. So what about the non-Jew? The non-Jew has their animal soul in their heart too, but it's not Klipat Noga unless it's a Jew from the Deomet Olam. Okay? So yes, so everyone has, now it's talking mainly about the Jewish animal soul, but everyone's soul is in the blood, okay? Because it says ki hadam hu hanefesh, because the blood is the soul. What soul is it talking about? It's talking about the animal soul, because the animal soul is what's connected directly to the most physical and humane thing, and blood is the most physical and humane thing. Yes. 1 minute, sorry about that. Let me just put off my phone. Yes, what's your question?
Question, you said the blood, Adam, c'est quoi?
Hadam, the blood.
Hadam.
Ki hadam hu hanefesh, because
Hadam
the...
hu hanefesh. Mais pour moi, la nefesh, pardon, pour moi, l'âme, c'est neshama.
Alors, il y a deux âmes. No, we learned. Il y a l'âme divine, which is la neshama, et il y a l'âme animal soul.
Nefesh et neshama, c'est pas pareil.
C'est pas pareil. Il y a différents. Dans la neshama, il y a 5 niveaux. Et nefesh, c'est le niveau le plus bas. Okay. Mais il y a la neshama, et dans l'homme, il y a aussi la nefesh habe'amet. Okay? Qui est le animal soul. Yeah. And that soul is in the blood. Okay?
Et chez les chrétiens, j'ai écouté un conférencier hier, avant-hier, pendant que je marchais, il parlait de the agnostic. Il said
the agnostic,
animal mind. En parlant de...
That's so interesting.
Agnostic animal mind, il disait.
Okay, for sure, ils ont dû prendre, Okay, so that's the animal soul. So the animal soul, again, I'm going to repeat, the animal soul is in the left ventricle of the heart, because that's where the heart is pumped out of, and it spreads out throughout the body, going up to the brain. Okay, why is it in the heart? Because the animal soul is dominated by emotions. Emotions are in the heart. Any negative emotion starts from the heart and then influences your whole body to follow. Okay, so when someone's angry, it starts in the heart, and then it goes to his hands, which can make him hit. It goes up to his head, which can make him red in the face and scream. Okay, it completely takes over your body. Okay, now מקום משכן נפש האלוקית הוא במוחין שבראש ומשם מספשטס לכל האיברים. But the abode of the divine soul is in the brains. the 3 brains that are in the head, and from there it extends to all the limbs. So the divine soul is essentially intellective, and the brain is the seat of intellect. Okay? וגם בלב בחלל הימיני שאין בו דם. It also resides in the heart, in the right ventricle where there is no blood. Okay? So it goes to it starts in the brain, that's where it starts in your intellect, and it also resides in the right ventricle where there's no blood. There is blood, but the blood comes there just to get oxygenated, and that represents the blood that's refined by the godly soul. Okay, like it gets the oxygen, it's very abstract, the blood that gets, so too the divine soul is an abstract thing. Okay, so you can really compare it. Ukmo shekasuv lev chacham limino, like the pasuk says, as it is written, the heart of the wise man is on his right. Okay, so there's a pasuk that says the heart of the wise man is on his right. Of the wise man. So it talks about the tzaddik, or the person that has complete control over his nefesh abamit. So his heart is in the right. He only controls it from the right side. You didn't understand? No, so it's simple. Yeah. There's a nefesh elokit and nefesh abamit. Yes. Each of them have a place where they stay, or where they get their source of energy.
Left side.
The heart. Yeah. The nefesh elokit starts in the brain and goes to the heart of the left side. The left side, there's no blood. It's not the source of blood. It's where the right side. What? The right side. I keep on mixing. Sorry. The right side is where the blood gets oxygenated. Okay. And that represents where the nefesh elokit purifies the emotions over there. It comes from the brain and it goes to the right side. Exactly. Okay, but
we're talking about the heart of the wise man, not the neshama. Is it the same?
Yeah, but it's the same. When it says that the heart of the wise man is on his right, it's talking about his soul. Yeah. Because your soul is what gives power and energy to your body. When a person's soul leaves, that body doesn't function. So it gives all the messages to your body. Yeah. All the messages you get. Now the question is, are you getting it from your nefesh elokit, your brain, or are you getting it from your heart, which is your nefesh abamit? Okay?
So elokit is connected to the brain?
Yes. Elokit resides, okay? It stays, the whole source of the nefesh elokit is in the brain. Yeah. And the life source of the nefesh habamit is in the left part of the heart. And it uses the same way that it's transmitted, just like by the brain, you give over messages through the neurological, right? Through the nervous system. So, that represents nefesh elokit, that gives over the message to the body. And the opposite is the blood. Okay? And it was interesting. I heard somewhere that the blood is more physical. You could understand it. You could see it. The way the brain transmits information is more abstract. And that's what nefesh, godliness, is. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so it says, so the heart of the wise man is on his right. That means that the divine soul is on the right side of someone who is wise, someone who is a tzaddik, who is righteous. Okay? This revelation in the heart of the divine soul residing in the brain is man's fiery love towards God. So once that person uses his brain to think about God, he is able to awaken love on the right side of the heart. Mislaheves belev maskilim, which flares up in the heart of discerning men who utilize their power of chachma. Okay, so these emotions only awaken or only come about after that person uses his intellect. Hamevinim umisbainanim. So first they use their chachma, then who understands and reflect, they use their bina, And then bedatam asher b'mocham, with the knowledge of their brain. Then they took their das and they brought it down bidvarim hame'arim esava, on matters that arouse this love. Okay, so the only way that someone could feel love for God is when he used his intellectual powers, his chachma, bina, and das, to awaken, to learn about God, and to awaken that emotion of love of God. Okay? As opposed to the nefesh abamit that has inborn emotion within the heart, and that it starts off in the heart and then goes to the whole body and then goes up to the brain and uses the intellectual faculties to get what it wants. Do you understand how they function differently? It's very important, because when you understand how they function differently, you can understand what is controlling you, what is taking over your body right now.
Yeah.
Similarly, another deep way in which the heart's emotion gives expression to the presence of the divine soul in the brain is the gladness of the heart at understanding the beauty of God and the majesty of his glory. The gladness that is aroused when the divine soul divine's intellect, which the Alter Rebbe, borrowing a phrase from I can't read that word, describes the wise man's eyes, which are in his head, meaning in the brain, harboring his wisdom and understanding. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe it brings different pesukim, which explains how these emotions, the love, the joy, the fear of God, are only awakened or are only born when you use your eyes. Okay, it brings a pasuk that talks about the eyes in your head. That means your chachma, bina, and das. When you really understand and contemplate and bring it down to practical, that's when you can feel those emotion. Mistaklim bikara de malka v'tiferes gedulasa ad ein cheker ve'ein sa v'sachlis kim vayar b'makam acher. When these eyes, the intellectual faculties, gaze intently at the glory of the King and the beauty of his unfathomable, infinite, and boundless greatness, then the heart rejoices and is glad, as is explained elsewhere.
Question.
We go.
Un peu avant ça, là, je vois en haut de la page 138.
Oui.
The divine soul in contrast. Ah non, ok, c'est bon.
Ça va?
J'avais pas vu les parenthèses.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. I think we read, I'm just going to finish actually. V'chein she'ar midas kedusha shebalev hein mechachma bina das shebemaychem. Similarly, all the other holy emotions, any holy emotions in the heart, such as fear of God and the like, originate from Chabad, which is from Chachma, Bina, and Das in the brains. Okay, so any emotion that exists, that are holy, that are fear of God, love of God, joy for God and for his Torah, these all come from Chachma, Bina, and Das. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe has thus established that each of these two souls has its own separate abode and way of functioning, lest we erroneously conclude that each soul goes about its own affairs, not interfering or concerning with those of the other. The Alter Rebbe continues. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop, and I'm just going to say it orally, okay, because I want you guys to understand. Okay, so now we understood that each soul has its own place. The animal soul is in the left ventricle of the heart, and it goes, just like the blood goes around the whole body, it goes to the whole body and controls and sends its influence over the whole body. The reason why it's in the heart is because the animal soul is dominated by emotions. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's in the soul is because the soul of a man is blood, and blood represents the most physical part of a man, and the animal soul is the most physical part of the man, so that's why it's in the blood. And just Okay, so that's for the animal soul. And for the godly soul, it's in the brain. It starts in the brain. You have to go through the three brains, okay, through Chachma, Bina, and Das. Bring it down, contemplate it, and then it goes throughout the body and into the to the right ventricle. In the right ventricle, there's no blood. Well, it's not pumped from there, and it resides there also. Okay, so the emotions that are awakened in that soul, in that ventricle, in that ventricle is only through Chachma, Bina, and Das. Okay, all the emotions, the holy emotions, can only be awakened through your intellect.
Why the divine soul is disconnected from blood? Is there a reason?
Why is it disconnected from blood? Because the divine soul is abstract,
Okay.
and it's not animal. The blood is it's the opposite.
Okay.
Exactly. So now that we understood that they both have different places, you can think that each of them live in their own places and don't bother the other, but that's not the case, okay? The Alter Rebbe explains that the body is just like a country or a city. Actually, I'll call it one city. I don't know, you can call it a country, a city, it doesn't really matter, but it's a village if you want. And the animal soul and the godly soul are two kings, and they are constantly fighting to control that city, to be king over and dominate over that city. And the godly soul, because it's godly and because it's refined, it can't handle anything that's not holy. So it needs to be able to control the body completely. And the animal soul, because it's egotistic and because it feels threatened by the godly soul, it also fights to completely control the body. That means that if your body, okay, if you're not aware, if you have two, we all have two souls, but if you're not aware of this and you have a godly soul and an animal soul and you don't really consciously make sure that one of them controls your body, you're constantly going to be fighting. Sometimes your godly soul is going to be fighting, sometimes your animal soul. They can never live side by side. They cannot live. There's no harmony between them. Because the godly soul is so refined, so pure, that anything that's unpure, it bothers it. It can't stand. When something's fine, très raffiné, it can't stand anything that's not refined. And the animal soul, because it's so egocentric, it feels threatened. It feels threatened by the godly soul. Exactly. Okay, so what happens? So there's our body, okay, which is like a city, and there's two kings, and they're constantly fighting. One king fights.
Yeah.
Wait, I want to find the right words.
Sorry.
One king fights to fully control that your body is completely surrendered and becomes a vehicle to it. Okay, so there's three things. The way they will fight is, first they want your body to be responsive. Okay, so your brain is response to your soul. Your brain listens, your soul sends message constantly. Your soul sends messages. Which soul sends messages? You have to dissect and try to understand which message comes from which soul. So constantly your brain is getting messages from your soul, and it's responsive. It wants to understand. It wants to absorb and understand what the king wants. Okay, think of it as two kings. Okay, we're going to think of it, the nefesh abamit and the nefesh elokit. So constantly they're sending messages from, the kings are sending messages, and your brain is listening to those messages. Okay, so let's say it's listening to the kingdom, the animal kingdom. Okay, I'm hungry, so that it listens, it responds, and then it sends messages to all your body to surrender. I'm hungry, and feel hungry and completely surrender and even desire that food, till it takes your body, your hands and your feet, and it becomes a vehicle to your desire, to that soul's desire, and you go make yourself some food and you eat. Okay? So that is how a king fully controls your body. Nefesh Elokit also sends a message. It sends little messages. It sends holy messages. Oh, I want to connect to God. So it tries to understand. So your brain tries to understand that message. It becomes responsive. Then your brain, of course, if your brain really listens to that answer and is strong in that sense that it learned about God, because if you don't know enough about godliness, so your brain is not going to be so responsive to that message, to your godly messages. Okay? So it has to go with learning and with understanding God. And of course, then it sends, it makes you surrendered and become a vehicle for kedusha, for godliness. Okay, so those are the three very important things for a king, for your neshama or your nefesh to fully control your body. It's responsive, surrender, and vehicle. So surrender means that you want what the king wants. You're surrendering to someone. La traduction de surrender, Marie, t'as la traduction de surrender? Soumis, je crois. Soumission. Soumission, c'est quand quelqu'un il veut faire que ce que l'autre il veut. When you're surrendering to another person is because your desire becomes his desire, or his desire becomes l'inverse. Yeah, his desire becomes your desire, okay? Yeah. So that's when you surrender. Responding is you're just listening to the other person, but you still have your own desires, but you're listening, you want to understand the other person. Surrendering is no, that's it. You put aside your desire and you just want to do what the other person. Submissive is similar to surrender. And then vehicle is when you become the chariot for the other person by doing. Okay, so these three things are how your body becomes subordinate to one of the kings. Now you're always going to be, there's never going to be the two kings ruling. It's sometimes, there's that constant battle. Why is there that constant? Right? It's exactly, or the Benoni also. Benoni completely put down their nefesh abamit, completely made it submissive and surrendered and a vehicle, but it's still there.
Yeah, I got it.
But at tzaddik, it's not even there. It doesn't even exist. That means, it says that David HaMelech says his heart was empty. His left ventricle was empty. Libi chalal b'kirbi. He says that in Tehillim because he had no nefesh, no yetzer hara.
Wow.
We can't say he had no nefesh abamit because that's what makes him live. But he had no yetzer hara. That means his nefesh abamit became a nefesh elokit. He had double. It was empty.
When somebody dies,
yeah.
It becomes only nefesh elokit?
When somebody dies, that's a very good question. When somebody dies, does he become a nefesh elokit? That's a very good question because his soul resides in the animal soul, in the blood. When there's no more blood, there's no more body. That's a good question. What happens to his animal soul? That's such a good question. Yes, I'm gonna look it up. What happens to the animal soul? Okay. Okay, so we understood that there's your body, which is like a city. There's the two kings. There's the nefesh elokit and nefesh abamit, the two kings that are constantly fighting and that they can't stand one another. They cannot rule if the other is there. So it's either complete rulership by one of them or complete rulership by the other one of them. And how do they take control over your body? Is by making your body, one, responsive, surrendered, and then a vehicle to your soul needs and desire. Okay, so responding, when your body responds, it's compared to the brain, to the intellectual faculties that try to understand your soul needs and desires. So response is connected directly to the brain. That's where your brain is the one who responds to the soul. Your surrendership is compared to the inner organs. All your inner organs, the heart, they're completely surrendered to your body. They will not have a mind of their own. They do what the body wants to do. And if they start to react against your body, that's when you have an unhealthy body, right? Okay, now we're explaining what a healthy body is. Healthy body and soul, it's connected. When you have a physical problem with your body, it's automatically connected to your soul, okay? And when you have a problem with your soul, it will respond into your physical body. So, exactly. So your brain is the one that responds to your soul. Okay, which soul? That depends which one took control over you. Your brain is the one that responds, it listens, it tries to understand, and sends messages to the body. Your organs are all surrendered. Your inner organs should be, for a healthy body and a healthy soul, your inner organs should all be surrendered to your soul at all times. They cannot make demand. If they refuse to be surrendered, then you have a health problem. So all your inner organs, okay, and those two are interconnected because the soul expresses itself through your physical body. So the surrender of your inner organs represent your health, your spiritual health, which is surrendered to the king that's ruling over your body. Okay, and then what's the last part? The last part is a vehicle. What is the vehicle? No, the vehicle are your feet. Your feet should not always respond. If your feet are always running and doing things that you don't want, then there's a problem. Your feet should only surrender or follow instruction when there's a rider. When you decide, okay, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, then your feet become the chariot to the soul. So this is how we see how our souls and our body are really interconnected. And depending on which soul takes control over our body, then that will be what will make us, that will automatically have an effect on our actions. So if it's our nefesh habamit, which is usually by regular people, the king of the body, then most of our actions are going to be animal and human, even if it's good actions, but it's all going to be for the nefesh habamit, which is selfish purposes. And your mind, your brain, your organs, your feet are all going to be responding, surrendered, and a vehicle for your nefesh habamit. If you are on a holy level and your godly soul is king over your body, then your brain is only going to have holy thoughts. Your organs are going to be surrendered and I guess infused with holiness, and your feet are only, your hands, everything is only going to bring you to do holy actions. And if not, you, like any regular person like myself, we're going to have the constant battle between both souls. And I'm sure that really people that know a lot of Kabbalah could find what sickness is related to what you're missing in your body, or in your soul. Sorry, what sickness is related to your soul? What is your soul missing? What does your soul need? Are you listening to your soul?
The same person I heard that was saying agnostic animal mind,
yes,
was saying it's been 20 years qu'il a jamais pris un médicament dans son corps.
Wow.
Because he learned how to master his brain, and it's all connected. Now I can.
Okay, but you can do that with your animal soul too. I'm just saying, like the animal.
No, it's not really holy.
No, so your animal soul could also be controlled. Right. Your animal soul could be controlled, but it's still not holy. Can you imagine? Even if you have, it says that someone who works on his self-confidence, on being a very, how do you call it? It's very popular now, like self-help, helping themselves and self-help, like to say, oui, bien sûr, you always read self-help books, development, personal development. So all this, if a person does all these things,
she can master like a lot.
It comes to no point if they don't listen to their godly soul. All that self-help and that work that is for your animal soul. You can boost it's like taking steroids and boosting yourself and being strong and not using your strength for anything.
Yeah, but it's helping that you understand that you can master your brain.
Yes, it's helping that, but it's not bringing you to it's not bringing you to anything. It doesn't bring you to ça. Il y a pas de but
non,
à
mon
ça.
point, c'est que peut-être que les tzadikim, ils ont compris aussi comment, par exemple, j'imagine mal Baba Saleh en train d'aller chez le médecin, se faire soigner ou prendre des médicaments ou quoi. Je pense qu'ils ont ce niveau qu'ils apprennent à eux-mêmes.
Well, do you know that the first of all, not all the tzaddikim were healthy, but because that's for a different reason. You know that they took sicknesses for yes, they take pain on them for the people instead of like the people to suffer so much. They take pain on themselves. But just an interesting story. You made me think. The Rebbe, or the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he had a heart attack, he had I think twice a heart attack. Okay, sorry, that I don't want to say. So I know once he had a heart attack and he was in his room. They left him in 770. He didn't want to leave 770. Okay, this was after his wife passed away, and they brought the whole medical system in his office, his bed, everything. My mother's husband was the Rebbe's nurse, and the Hasidim really wanted to hear the Rebbe, and the doctor said no, he can't talk. But the Rebbe still wanted to talk to the Hasidim, and his heart was on, how do you call the machine where you see the heartbeat? Exactly. And he still spoke against the doctor's order. And when he was speaking, the doctor, after they told this, his heartbeat stopped and he was talking. So, of course, a tzaddik, I don't think you can compare a tzaddik's health to our health. It's incomparable. They live above nature. He was able to talk with no heartbeats. Okay, just understand that. Obviously, he was on a different level. They're vehicles for God. Any pain and sicknesses they have is for us. It's not for them. It doesn't represent their fault. It just because they took upon the leadership of being our protectors and our leaders, they take upon the pain that's supposed to go to us, unfortunately, to our tzaddikim. But on a different note, us regular people, our soul and our body are interconnected. Our soul both souls are constantly fighting to take over the body. Sometimes the animal soul and sometimes the godly soul. Okay, so usually you're for regular. This Tanya is written for regular people. Most regular people, their animal soul is completely taking over your body. Okay. We respond to it, we surrender to it, we become a vehicle. Look at me. I'm constantly feeding myself, I'm constantly taking care of my health. I'm responding to my animal soul. Mm-hmm. Now, if I do all this, okay, and I build myself, my health, my self-esteem, and I really work on myself to be very confident and very healthy, but I don't respond to my godly soul, it's as if you have health and strength for no reason and you're not using it. Okay, and it will. That's why a lot of people, many times they're going to be super healthy and super into their self-esteem and all that. But if they're missing godliness, then there's an emptiness, and your soul is not going to be happy. Let me explain this with a story. There's a king, and he has his prince. Okay. And his prince, he knows he's going to be the future king, and he really needs him to be a strong prince with good values and good morals. Okay, so what does he do? This king hires a prostitute, and he tells the prostitute to challenge his prince to see how strong he is morally, but that she has to disguise, and he cannot know that she comes from the king, and she has to, everything she does has to be in order to seduce him, and without him ever knowing that she's sent from the king. At the same time, she's hired from the king. She works for the king. She respects the king. She doesn't really want the prince to fail this, but she has this, I guess, this mixed feeling where she doesn't want him to fail, but she has to do everything in her possibility to make him fail, because that's what will make him stronger. This parable, in Hebrew we call it mashal, this parable is what the Nefesh Abamit, the Yetzer Hara, is why God created. He's on top. He hired this Nefesh Abamit. He hired this Yetzer Hara to come and control us and try to seduce us in order to give us the freedom of choice. So even if in the end this Nefesh Abamit, this Yetzer Hara wins over our body, he will still be upset, or it will, whatever we call it, or she will still be upset, because deep down it wants us to be able to be controlled by the Nefesh Elokit and completely for God. But it's only there, it's only created, its whole purpose is not for us to get to somewhere. His whole purpose is with a means to an end. It's only to make us able to choose between being human and being godly. So there's no really win or lose. It's either you lose, no, there's no win-win. You don't win if you have your animal soul taking over, because your animal soul in the end will be sad, and you will feel that sadness. Your animal soul wants you to connect to the godliness. Mm-hmm. So in the end, godliness is the only way to connect to your Nefesh Elokit, is the only way. And by understanding that the godliness is only through the brain, you understand that you really have to learn and to really use your intellectual faculties in order to have those emotions. Friendly. To be Chabad friendly, exactly. Chabad friendly, yeah. But you really have to work on your Chabad, because they don't come naturally. Your Nefesh Abamit, a child is not responsible.
By what, like praying,
studying, by learning, by studying, by contemplating, by bringing it down, by using your levushim, your garments, for godly things. And we also see that it's easier to be controlled by the Nefesh Abamit than the Nefesh Elokit, because the Nefesh Abamit are emotions that are inborn. The heart, most people feel with the heart, right? Do you feel with your brain? You don't. The brain is very cold, okay? And the emotions. No, I don't. I do what? Which means, okay, I have to think of what that means. But I don't feel with my brain. How do you feel with your brain?
It's because tu fais beaucoup la part des choses when it comes to emotions. Tu es rationnel. It's very good.
It's possible.
I'm jealous of that.
But the point is that emotion, no, but you know what? Don't confuse that, because sometimes you do intellectual things that are really come from emotions. You shouldn't confuse that. They said that in the Nefesh Abamit, in the animal soul, you also have intellectual faculties. Yes, you also do, but they're going to be in order to get somewhere that your emotions want. So it doesn't mean anything. If someone's more intellectual, they can still be following their desires, their heart's desires. I think we have to be careful with that. But I really think this is where it's the heart, to have your Nefesh Elokit, emotions, fear of God, love of God, that I haven't experienced yet. That is only through really contemplating and thinking Chachma Bina Das and bringing it down to the right ventricle, and that's where the Nefesh Elokit feels.
You become a wise man.
Exactly, that's where you become a wise man. And so this is the struggle.
Wow.
So to review, is there's two places where there's the home for the Nefesh Elokit and the home for the Nefesh Abamit. The Nefesh Abamit resides in the heart. Okay, because that's where the blood is, that's where the emotions are.
On the left side.
On the left side, because that's where the blood is pumped. It really makes sense when you think about it. And you feel it. When you're angry, you feel that. Starts over there. And the Nefesh Elokit is in the brain. And it only, the emotions are only created once you really use your Chachma Bina Das to create those emotions, and it spreads throughout the body.
It resides also in the right side.
And it also goes to the right side, exactly. The emotions, I think once you create those emotions, the emotions come from the right side. They're on the right side.
But emotions of God.
Of God, exactly. Fear of God, love of God, joy. Okay, now we also have to understand that even if they both have different places, they hate each other. Okay, each of them want to take control over the body. Okay, the nefesh elokit one needs to take full control of the body because it's so refined and it can't. It's allergic. Okay, it's allergic to anything that's not holy. And the nefesh abamid is so egocentric that it's it's threatened by the nefesh elokit. Okay, so how do they take over your body? How do they fight over your body? Is by making sure your body is responsive, then surrendered, and then becomes a vehicle to that king. Okay, why this struggle? Who knows? Why do we have this struggle? Why did God have to create two opposites inside of us? Exactly, to allow the human condition to make a free choice to choose between godliness and being human. And being human. So being human is not a holy thing. You're only holy when you go above nature and you do something God. No, not when you die. I think everyone experiences once or a few times during the lifetime when you have a strong choice. Exactly, you have a strong choice and it brings out a side into you. And I know that's what's called Mesirat Nefesh. You know what Mesirat Nefesh is? Giving up your life. Mesirat Nefesh is giving up your life for God. Okay, today we don't give up our life. Exactly, like martyr, but you know, anyone who was in the Holocaust, that's what they did. They gave up their life for being Jewish. Any time in history, people that gave up their lives for God, that was Mesirat Nefesh. That's when their Nefesh Elokit fully took control over, that they gave up their life for God. So throughout our life, we have different times where we're, you know, like I think every day we have that struggle, and then, okay, tzaddikim, they live their life constantly like that, but I'm talking for the regular people to give us hope. This is my personal, how do you call it? My personal thoughts is that few times, and you can think about it, and maybe you didn't experience it yet, but few times in your life you're faced with a challenge, a very strong challenge that really you can choose two sides where it's very clear. It's either going to be something for yourself, or you're going to put yourself aside and you're going to do something and you're going to lose out and it's going to be painful, but you're going to do it because you have to do it for whatever reason. So I find once in a while during our lifetime, people have that where it's brought out, and usually aujourd'hui c'est une forme de Mesirat Nefesh. Quand tu mets de côté your selfish purposes and you do something for the right reason. I have an example for you of when you did it. Well, just the birth of Nessa. That's Mesirat Nefesh. So, and again, it's important to know that you can build your self-image, you can build your self-esteem, you can really work on your health and your everything, but if it's without godliness, then it has no purpose, and it's like someone who fills himself with steroids, exactly, and is super strong, but he doesn't use it. First of all, it's fake, and second of all, exactly, and he's not using it for anything. So the only way it's good to be healthy and to take care of your self-image and your self-esteem, but not to forget your godliness and your godly soul, and listening to those messages. And just know that the whispers of the godly soul is much more quiet than the whispers of the animal soul. The animal soul is very loud. And
because it's refined.
It's refined, exactly. It doesn't need a scream. So, but because it doesn't need a scream, it's not heard. And I think it explains why it's harder to do things that are for God.
The Rebbe, gives us the not Benoni, but whatever, any guidance?
All the time, all the sichas of the Rebbe.
Listen to these messages.
For sure. All the sichas of the Rebbe, like he gave every Shabbos a talk, every time sometimes he gave a mimer, which is like a even higher kind of talk. All is related to this. Everything is related to this.
So we're gonna learn that.
Well, that's what you learn on every Wednesday with Rabbi. Those are more complicated to learn. Very, very complicated to learn, and not all of them, but it's a different kind.
Not in the Tanya, you mean?
No, Tanya is like the basic, and everything else. All Chassidus is based on Tanya. It's like the Torah, and then everything else is based on the Torah. So the Tanya is the Torah of Chassidus. So all the sichas, everything that you learn in Chassidus originates from the Tanya. So by understanding the Tanya is really understanding the basics in a way. It's not even that basic, but how we function and how our soul and our animal soul functions, our godly soul, and then all the Rabbeim, after the Alter Rebbe, they all brought in sichas, which is like talks and maimarim that are all, sicha is like a talk. Ça veut dire en hébreu, une sicha, and they are all based on Tanya. Okay? Any questions?
C'était bien. I like
it. So this was interesting. Do you see how it's so different from the first 8 chapters? It's like a whole different.
Ouais, là on rentre plus dans le vif un peu.
Exactly. I find it's more practical. Practical.
Ouais.
Okay, so I'm going to see you guys next week. This was a good class. And,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sterna.
With pleasure. Bye.
Bye.